Working productively with SketchUp requires learning some functions that aren't immediately obvious from the user interface. When you're in SketchUp, you've learned about the Orbit tool, which allows you to change the view of the design that you're looking at. And you can hold the Shift key down and you can pan back and forth. So that's great. However, if you have a scroll wheel on your mouse or keyboard, you have access to a lot of that same functionality regardless of the tool that you're using. For example, if we've got the Select tool chosen here, and then I use my scroll wheel, you can see that it automatically rotates around to give me the different view. If I hold the Shift key and turn the scroll wheel, it pans up and down. If I hold the Control key, it zooms in and out. I find this is the one that I use the most often, is having the Control scroll wheel zoom, because no matter what you're doing then you can do that. So if I wanted to move this object, for example, I'm going to move dude around, and then I decide I want to change my view on that, I can pan around, I can zoom in and out. So depending on how complex the drawing I'm working on, I may find I want to change my view. So it allows you to do that really easily. You've probably figured out that when you've got the Select tool selected and you click on something, well, you select that item. However, there's more to selecting than simply that one-click environment. I'm going to start off by creating a circle. And now if I go back to the Select tool, if I click once on that circle, you can see that just the surface inside the circle has been selected. It's a little easier to see if I rotate around. So using the scroll wheel there. Okay, so you can see that I've selected that. If I click away, then I'm not selected. However, what you notice is that the outside, the perimeter of the circle, was not selected. If I select just the perimeter, now the perimeter is selected, but the inside surface area is not selected. However, if I double click on either part, either the surface or the perimeter, it selects both. So if I want to move it, then I'm moving both at the same time. So that's with a two-dimensional object. If I've got a three-dimensional object, so I'll take my circle and turn it into a cylinder. I'm going to get rid of dude here for the moment. If I select once, I've got the surface. If I select twice, I get the circle and its perimeter. And if I triple click, I get the whole object. So I've got all parts of it. Similarly, if I'd had a rectangular prism, I click once, I get the surface. Twice, I get the surface and its outside perimeter. And three times, and I've got the whole rectangular prism. So it selected all the surfaces of that object. So really, really quick way of just selecting a whole object. Now, if you want to select multiple items at the same time, supposing I want to select the top and the side at the same time, if I hold down the Shift key, you can see that the cursor changes a little bit to have a plus and a minus on it. So now when I click on one and click on the other, now both of those are selected. So you can select multiple things at the same time. And finally, if you want to select multiple items, another way of doing it is you click and drag your mouse and then let go, and it selected everything that was inside that box. So in this case, we selected both items. Now if I chose the Move tool, when I move, they both move just in exactly the same orientation as they were when they started. Okay, so that's selecting. Another thing that can happen sometimes when you're working with a design, you might accidentally get one surface deleted. And you might not notice right away because you're working on other parts of the drawing, and then you turn it around and you realize, oh, I accidentally deleted a whole big part that you didn't want to. You can close up a surface again. If you simply select 2 points, that recloses the surface, and then I can use the Erase tool to delete that line, and I'm back to having a fully closed object. Keep in mind that this only works with flat surfaces. So if I had deleted the sides of this cylinder, I can't simply go ahead and redraw the edge. Doing that doesn't solve the problem. No matter how many lines you draw, it's not going to reconnect that surface. So it only works with flat surfaces. So the Erase tool can be very helpful in a scenario like that. It also has another use. When you're trying to build more complex shapes, you might say, for example, supposing we've got a circle and we wanted to have just part of that circle. So let's say we just want some wedge of it. Say we want something like just this little wedge like that. Then I can simply take the Erase tool, and by erasing the parts that I don't want, I end up with just that little wedge. So starting with a bigger shape, drawing some lines, and erasing what you don't want allows you to do that. It's important to note that the erase tool works on lines. It doesn't really work on surfaces. I can rub it on this surface and it doesn't delete it. What causes that surface to disappear, however, is if I delete a line that is closing in that surface. So because I deleted that or erased that horizontal line, it got rid of the surface. But if I put that line back in, it closes in both surfaces again. Two more quick tips. If you've got a circle like this and you want to find the exact center of it, sometimes it's helpful when you're trying to line things up. So if you double click on an object and then right click on it, so by double clicking I selected both the outside and so I've got the perimeter and the surface area of it, I have an option called Find Center when I right click on it. Now if I use the Move object, I can hold on to that center and move around, and supposing I wanted, I could drop it right there. So it allows me to move an object or to get a hold of an object directly from its center. When we're working with odd shapes, particularly shapes that are don't have nice straight lines that are lined up with the red, green, and blue axes, using the rotate tool can sometimes be really difficult. So for example, if I wanted to rotate this circle, obviously if I want to rotate it from the top down here, I can use my rotation tool, click off the center, and now I rotate it around, so it's rotating around the center point. That's really easy, but what if I wanted to tip it up onto its edge? So what we'd have to do then is I might take my orbit tool and change my orientation, and then I use my rotation tool, but it wants to default to the blue view, and what I really want is it to be tipped up on its side so that I'm rotating around on the green or the red view. So what I can do then is by using the keyboard shortcuts for either the right arrow or left arrow or up arrow, it locks in the rotation tool for that orientation. So sorry, I'm going to rotate back here. So now when I click, it's fixed there, and so I can simply click and rotate to whatever I want it to be, and I might say I want to turn 90 degrees there. So the key things there are the right arrow gives you the red axis rotation, left arrow gives you the green axis rotation, and the up arrow gives you the blue axis rotation. Sometimes you might want to add comments or need to add comments or add some text. Now, we do have the 3D text, which is great if it's sort of part of the design. But if you're just trying to add comments, you might want to just have a text tool. So you can do this if you want to annotate things. So you can click and drag and have an arrow attached to something. So if we did that, and then we went back to our orbit tool, you'll see as we turn around, those coordinates stick with the object that it was attached to. However, we can also just go out and click and add some comments. Maybe I just want to have some general comments about the design. Now when I use the orbit tool, you see that those comments stay in the place where they're located. You can also see that if we add some text here, and then take that text, select it with the object, and use the group tool to create a group. Now when I move that object, the text will move along with it. So even though it's not like this where it's I got an arrow attached to a particular part, it's still closely associated with that object, so it'll go wherever that object goes. Now finally, some best practices to keep in mind. First of all, save often. Particularly the very first time as you start to do a design, if it's still untitled, you're not paying attention, you haven't saved it. So the first thing you want to do is go in and click there, say yes, you can purge all, and then go ahead and give it a place to save. Then, as you work on build a more complex design, you may get to the point where you've put a lot of time into things. It is possible sometimes that images get corrupted or you make too many mistakes and you kind of make it worse than it used to be, and you want to back up. Now, in each session, as you're working, you have the undo function, so you can undo things, right? We can go here and I can say, okay, undo, undo, undo. Right? We can undo a whole bunch of steps, and we can redo. So yes, you have that functionality. But after you've saved it and exited and come back in, you don't have those undo steps you can go back through. So what you want to do as you get to a certain point, you've got a lot of functionality that you've put into your design, save, use the save as functionality. So file, save as, make another copy, give it a new name. So often you do version 1, version 2, version 3, version 4, and so on. That allows you to keep track of which one, and that way if something goes wrong, you can always back up to that point. Finally, the most important keyboard shortcuts you should know. The letter R for rectangle, C for circle, P for push, Q for rotate, O for orbit, E for erase, L for line, M for move, S for scale, and the spacebar takes you to the select key. Using those tools will allow you to move around SketchUp much more quickly and build up your designs and drawings much, much faster. Hope this is helpful.